All right, everybody, welcome back to the realm. I'm Rich,
I'm Jen.
I'm Amy.
I'm Brian.
and today we have a special episode of Wrestling with the Realm. We're going to let Brian brief us and brief all of our viewers. If you're not aware, it is a spinoff of the Realm and T.R.P.D, so to speak. It's just another branch of the Realm where Brian and his buddy Will, I believe it is, correct?
That's right.
Talk about wrestling, all things wrestling, and I don't know. He's gonna let us know about everything they talk about, the ins and outs of wrestling, and what we can look forward to for the rest of the season. How many seasons have you been doing this so far? Just the first season?
Well, we're not even breaking up into seasons. This
Oh,
is
okay.
kind of a constant, much like the sands through the hourglass. These are the days of our lives. I
Oh.
cheekily say,
Oh,
as wrestling runs like a soap opera.
true.
There's ending to storylines and beginnings of new ones. So, this is
How
kind
about
of a
how about we start
constant.
with you telling me about your sweatshirt you're wearing there?
Oh, well, I'm glad you noticed. I'm wearing the lovely Liv Morgan's
Oh,
World's
yeah, I see
the
that.
greatest women's tag team champion of all time, the
All
greatest
right.
women's champion of all time,
Oh,
Liv Morgan,
okay.
out in Hollywood, shooting movies now. But yes,
Yeah.
lovely Liv Morgan,
Yeah.
as she has been the MVP for the past year in that locker room, men's or women's side.
Nothing wrong with that. All right.
That's right.
Another question for you. What are the chances of you getting Carrot Top on your podcast for Wrestling with the Realm as a guest star?
It's not 0%. I'll say that. It's not
It's
zero.
not zero.
Yeah, it's not. It's not zero.
I mean, because next time you go, you could just have a live mic playing, and you can just kind of,
That's actually not a bad idea. That's actually pretty smart. I haven't thought about that. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not 0%. I'll say that.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good to know. So, why don't you tell us how you guys go about setting up your weekly talk? What do you do for research? Is it strictly you guys? Are you scanning the internet for stuff? Are you guys watching the weekly wrestling stuff and then going off of that? How does it work?
So, first off, everybody, we start every episode welcoming the Realm family to Wrestling with the Realm because we want you guys, if you guys are interested in wrestling, come over and listen to me and Will. Like, there's a lot of crossover between professional wrestling and the paranormal fans. So if you guys haven't already, go onto YouTube. That's where you can find Will and I. If you're listening to us right now on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or somewhere like that, you can find Wrestling with the Realm podcast on YouTube. Just go onto YouTube, put in Wrestling with the Realm, will pop up. Subscribe, like our videos. So Will and I, it's a really interesting dynamic because Will is 21, I'm 44. Will's parents are, close to my age, and Will's a big wrestling fan. I grew up a wrestling fan. I got out of it for a long time, since probably the early 2000s, was when I stopped watching. And then over the last 2 years, especially going back a year ago, leading up to WrestleMania, wrestling was getting hot. It was getting red hot. The story that they were doing with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns and The Rock, there's a lot of crossover since WWE was purchased by TKO, who owns UFC. The product has gotten bigger, and with that story in particular leading up to WrestleMania, it was
Is that Dana
engaging.
White that owns that?
Well, it's Ari Emanuel owns the whole company. The main top of it is Ari Emanuel, and then I think is it Tony Khan maybe is the head of the wrestling division. Dana White's the head of the UFC. So The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, is on the board.
Well, I'm
Like,
sure he is.
legitimately, that's not a storyline angle. He legit is, because he's close with Ari Emanuel and all those guys. So he does insert himself into some of these stories. Me and Will talk about it. It's not good. Um, but Will and I would talk at work about wrestling, and he knew that we do this podcast, we do the Realm Paranormal podcast, and he would always say that we got to get something going with wrestling. And at a certain point, I talked to Gina, and I said, I have this idea called Wrestling with the Realm. Explained it to her, that's what we like to talk about. It's pretty natural. We might as well record it because it's
Sure.
it's a hot topic right now.
Sure.
So we ran off running, and I think because Will and we have two different dynamics. Will is new school, and I'm old school wrestling fandom. So we kind of collide that way, and it makes for an interesting talk between the two of us. We do old stuff. We like to call that our retro rewatches, where we'll rewatch some of the old pay-per-views from the 80s and 90s. We've done WrestleMania 9 because that was the first time WWE was ever in Vegas for a WrestleMania. And then this past year, just last month, was the second time, and I got to be there. And so we like to do these retro rewatches where we'll watch some of the older stuff, which is a lot of fun because you can just turn your brain off and see a time capsule of whatever year it was that pay-per-view took place. Uh, then we also talk about news and current event things that are going on within WWE. We will dabble a little bit in some of the other affiliations and organizations, but we tend to stick to the WWE stuff. Um, we'll review current pay-per-views. Like if you guys go on now, you'll see we have a lot of WrestleMania 41 content because that just happened. So we have a big predictions video that we did, our review, and then kind of an added little bonus trip review because me and my wife were there in Vegas over WrestleMania weekend, and I do a whole review talking about it. We went to the roast of WrestleMania, which is the first time they've ever done this. It wasn't televised or anything like that.
What
Uh,
was that at?
Fontainebleau.
Mm,
Oh,
Uh huh.
never been
So
there.
it was, yeah, it was. Oh, you
In a
haven't gone in
theater,
there
or
yet?
was it in a theater, or was it just like
Yeah.
in a conference room, or what?
No, it was in their theater. They actually have like a really big. It's a nice theater. Have you not gone in there to gamble?
Fontainebleau, we went through there, but I mean, yeah, I guess I'm thinking of some. Yeah, I'm thinking of someplace else.
Are you thinking of Resorts World?
No, I'm thinking of like the Cosmopolitan and over there.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
thinking of that stuff.
Aria. Okay,
Yeah, Aria, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah,
okay,
Fontainebleau.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that place.
yeah. I
So
thought
as long
it's
as it took them, as long as it took them to make that place,
yeah, for real.
sure, it is nice.
Yeah, yeah. They do a good job. Me and Danny always say it's like the closest. Like the Win kind of would try to do this, but it feels like Fontainebleau tries to be the closest to like the Montecito. They try to give you a more upscale experience without being like snooty about it. If that makes like the Win, not really anymore, but when the Win first opened, remember how stuffy it was? Like they made you feel like you might not should be gambling up in there if you're not from a certain level of affluence. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fontainebleau is nice, but it was in their theater. They got
Okay.
a state of the art theater. Um, so the roast was really cool. It was Tony Hinchcliffe. Fluffy was there. Uh, Carrot Top came out, which I was very excited about. And the next night at his show, I talked to him about it. So it was very interesting. So my review, my trip review being in Vegas, that's up. If you just want to hear me talk about Vegas, you can go listen to that one, even if you don't care about the wrestling. But you can find that, got that trip review. So yeah, we want to be like two friends talking about wrestling, and people can jump on and listen to that and feel like they're part of our conversation. Like that's basically the vibe that we're going for, is just a couple of guys talking, not different than what we do on here.
so is it the same where you record in advance and then release later, or have you ever thought about having like a live podcast where your fans might be able to call in and interact with you real time?
We haven't done a live one yet, but we've been talking about that. So yeah, we'll pre-record or record because pre-recording is nonsense. What are you going to do? Record before you record?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, like a preheated oven
exactly. There's only two states an oven can be in: heated or
or not
unheated.
heated. Yeah, it can't be preheated.
There's no
Can't.
such thing as preheated. What does pre-board mean? To get on the plane before you get on? Um,
We did that.
yeah. So we record the shows ahead of time, and then we'll put them out a few days later. We like to try to be as quick as we can for a lot of the topical stuff.
Yeah, I bet.
Uh,
Yeah.
but one of the things that was really fun, and we've kind of dabbled in it here on the paranormal side when we were at the Paracon. We did some, walking around interviews to try to do
Yep.
some of that interaction with people. I got to do a lot of that when we were in Vegas for WrestleMania, and it
Yeah,
was
that was
a
cool.
lot of fun.
Yeah, it looked like it was fun.
Yeah, if you guys want to see that, if you're just interested to see me doing some man on the street talking to wrestling fans and asking them some questions, it's on our shorts on our YouTube channel. It was a lot of fun. Will and I do something. We do a whole series called Overrated, Underrated Superstars. We've done 3 of them so far, and it's one of our some of the most fun we have is when we do those episodes. So we'll bring 5 or 6 superstars and we'll throw them out to each other, and then we decide if we think they're overrated or underrated, or sometimes we do the very unpopular, the right where they should be. That's not good radio doing that, but every once in a while it's true, and we try to be as objective and fair as possible. So when we were in Vegas, I was playing a lot of rounds of overrated, underrated with the wrestling fans, and it was a lot of fun. It was super cool to be able to interact with everybody, for them to be excited about talking to a podcast was really fun. So it was cool. I'm excited for us to do some of that stuff over here on the paranormal side, just like doing the live show. I thought that our live cast when you guys were over in Ireland, I thought that was one of the cooler things that we've done here on the paranormal side, is being able to do that live cast was super cool.
Yeah, I
So,
agree with that too. Yeah.
so I
That
think on both sides there, on the wrestling side and on the paranormal side, we've really been doing some extra cool things that hopefully we get to keep doing.
sweet. So, what kind of things you guys got in the pipeline? You got anything planned? Is there any other special events coming up? I don't watch a lot of wrestling. I'll pay attention to it, but I don't follow it to a T. So,
You do own a Liv Morgan T-shirt,
who doesn't?
it, and a autographed Liv Morgan card.
Yeah, I've got 2.
2 of them. My mistake. Okay, just saying.
If you're counting.
I didn't know about the second one, so that's news to me. So okay.
Yeah. So what's coming up? Anything good that listeners need to know about?
Yeah, so actually, right now, as of this recording, Backlash is going on right now. That is the newest pay-per-view for WWE. I still call them pay-per-views. They don't call them that. They call them premium live events now
How
because
often do they
no
do
longer
those?
pay-per-view. There's usually one every month or every 2 months. There's 4 big ones throughout the course of a year that basically. I mentioned it earlier that for people who don't know, because maybe we have some viewers who really don't know wrestling or they've never really thought about it, um, wrestling does work as a soap opera. It's telling these dramatic stories with battles and conclusions being done in the ring. We have a men's division, and now in 2025, we have a women's division that is more entertaining than the men's, and they're more athletic than the men. It's a great time to be watching because you have such a balanced story that you can tell at this day and age in professional wrestling. So usually there's 4 big pay-per-views that they will tell this story through. You start with SummerSlam. That happens,
I've heard that
in the
before.
summer.
Yep.
Then you go into the fall, and we get to Survivor Series, which used to be the Thanksgiving Day tradition. Survivor Series, teams of 5 battle to stay alive. So that's
So
usually in the
how
fall.
does this differ from, like you were talking back in the 80s and 90s with the first WrestleManias? Did they only have one a year back then? Was it saturated where they did the same thing where it was like four of them? I seem to remember it was only every now and then. It wasn't
Yep.
like it was, you could count it like you're saying, four a year, stuff like that. I don't think it wasn't like that back then, was it?
No, so they started out. You had WrestleMania, like
Right,
that
right,
was the whole inception of doing this big pay-per-view, and even
right,
then, it really wasn't pay-per-view. It was not exactly that. They were taking the closed circuit television and they were releasing that. It was a whole thing, but essentially pay-per-view. But that
right,
was just one thing. And then as it's super interesting, and we get into this stuff on the podcast too. We do talk a lot of historical things and just the reality of wrestling. We look at it from both sides. We like to talk about the storylines that are going on, how those are being performed, how well is somebody performing in the ring. But then we also do the flip side of that, which is the reality side. And you can critique things on how are they telling the story? Is this the best way for them to be doing it?
right.
Could they do something different? Or what do we think they're going to do? Because what is the best way to tell certain angles and stories? Um, so we like to look at it from the whole thing of professional wrestling, the business, the in-ring work, the stories. Kayfabe is known in the business. If kayfabe is the fake part, quote unquote,
Hmm.
that's the you know kayfabe means it's still part of the story. You're telling the story. So if Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio are out at Chili's eating chicken tendies and a camera is on them, they are going to be in character as though they're a couple, even though in real life Dom is married and has a wife, but it's acting. They're telling a story. So kayfabe would be them continuing to tell that story when somebody's around and they're in character. Um, so we do get into that kind of stuff. And one of those historical things we talk about is kind of all the pay-per-views, like you asked, Rich, where it started out as WrestleMania.
Yep.
Then you would get to another part of the year and either a rival company or somebody's not doing it at this time. How can we get another chunk of money from people to put on another big show? So then you would get
Right.
Survivor Series. Then after Survivor Series, you come up with Royal Rumble,
Yep.
and
Remember that
then
name.
that brings you to WrestleMania. So back in the day, it started out as WrestleMania, then we got Survivor Series added in, then Royal Rumble. So like through the 80s and 90s, those were the only four you would see throughout the year on pay-per-view would be SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and then WrestleMania, and then you start it all over again. That would be your calendar year. Now they add in other pay-per-views or premium live event shows throughout the entire year in between those. So every month or every 2 months you're going to have one that's going to be a bigger event where you're going to, blow off some more of these storylines and end them or progress them. That's how you do the story. And back when we were growing up, you would see one of these pay-per-views and there would be 16 or 17 matches on it because you got to get everybody's stuff in. Now, because the way that they tell the stories and the amount of talent they have, that's all top tier talent. Like on Backlash tonight, there's only like 5 or 6 matches. That's it. Not everybody gets on to these middle shows or these filler shows. You tell those stories, you continue to tell those during the week on Mondays and Fridays. So it really does play out like a soap opera. And I'll say what Danny said because she's a casual fan, especially now because she has to put up with me with this because now we're doing a podcast about it. Um,
There's an
when
orb on your
we
screen.
went, what's that?
There was an orb on your screen going across the front of your sweatshirt just a second ago.
Oh, was there really?
Yep.
Oh, it was Liv Morgan sending me good juju.
Oh,
Yeah.
clearly.
Um, so Danny made a good point when we were at NXT. So WWE has a developmental brand called NXT. It comes on Tuesday nights, and that's where it's kind of the minor leagues. But they still tell their own stories within their own little NXT universe, which usually tends to be a little bit more fun. It's a lot more 80s and 90s. They can be a little bit more wacky and fun. Um, so if you're into that kind of thing, if you haven't watched in forever, but you liked that style, watch on Tuesday nights on CW NXT. That has a lot of that more campy vibe to it.
Mm.
But they had one of their pay-per-views on WrestleMania weekend in Vegas at T-Mobile on Saturday.
Mm.
So for Saturday, WrestleMania was at night, and then in the morning it was the NXT show. So we went to that, and it was great. It was a great show. It was probably it was better than WrestleMania this past year. I'll spoil that for anybody who didn't know.
Did I ask you if you saw Kyle Larson?
I did not.
Okay. Because he was on, I guess he had made an appearance at WrestleMania. That's why I'm
Yeah,
asking
he
that.
did.
Oh,
Yeah, he did. But
okay.
yeah, I didn't see him though.
Gotcha.
But we watched NXT, and Danny made a really good point, and she said there really isn't anything like professional wrestling in 2025 because it's not just acting, and it's not just um, performing gymnastics. There is a physicality that goes beyond that, and you go, well, like a stunt person is close. You go, yeah, but the stunt person doesn't have to act on set in front of 18,000 people and be able to tell a story while they're taking bumps and doing all the physical stuff. Plus there's the bigger over the top performance. She said it's a lot like drag in a certain way where you have the theatrics that have to go with it. So it's all very connected, but there's not one set thing that you can really compare professional wrestling to. It really is its own thing. And in 2025, when if you want to see, behind the curtain how they do all this stuff or how they take these bumps, there's shows that you can watch that'll show you how it's done. Wrestling is fake that it's predetermined and it's a script and you're telling a story, but the physical things that they're doing in the ring are pretty amazing sometimes. And there is a real grace and beauty to some of the matches and some of the big spots that people do when you take Io Sky and she climbs 20 feet up on the top of a steel cage and puts a garbage can over the top of herself and then throws herself down on to five other women wrestlers. You go, that's a cool thing to see because everybody in that spot has to be doing their job. Everybody has to do everything right so nobody gets hurt because it's still somebody jumping off of a 20-foot structure onto people who have to essentially catch her, but they all still have to make it look good that they got hurt and that they didn't just catch this person. The person who's inside the garbage can has to hope that the other people do what they're supposed to do so she actually gets caught and not just dropped. Like there's a delicate dance that goes on with what they do in that performance that is really cool. And when you watch it for that type of story, it's really neat. That's one of the things that I love most about it is just seeing how all of these superstars what they have to do to put on the show they do, and the ones who do it really really well, the ones who are some of the greats, they really make it look fantastic.
When you talked about, you're 44 and your friend is Will is 21. I have grandkids that are so into wrestling and they know all of these characters. This is just
Mm-hmm.
a timeless type um, entertainment, and they are athletes. They play their songs. They know each wrestler by the song that they're playing. They talk. They know the movements. They know the catchphrases. They know,
Mm-hmm.
that The Rock is now the bad guy. Now he's a good guy. Now he's a bad guy. I mean, they follow all of those stories. So it really is something that has, grabbed generation after generation after generation. It's really cool. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm learning from my grandkids. So That's pretty cool.
That's another thing. We're family friendly. So if any of you do have kids that are wrestling fans, and you want to listen to it, but you're not sure, Will and I are a family friendly program. We make sure that, sometimes here on the Realm Paranormal side, we're more of an adult product, but you guys are aware of that. Over on the WWR side, we're always going to be a family friendly product. So if you guys are ever worried about that, it's okay. If you have kids that are fans of wrestling, they can listen to the show. We'll be fine for them. Will and I work at a very prestigious school, so we take a lot of pride and a lot of ownership in what we do to make sure that everybody who's inside that building can watch us and be comfortable with that. So we're definitely family friendly, which your
Okay.
grandkids know.
Yes, yes. I think that they think so highly of you, and they love talking to you about the wrestling. So
Maybe you should interview kids.
It's a good idea
oh, you
because
should definitely have
because
Derek on. Oh, he would
Get
have
their
so
get their
much to
thoughts on
say.
your overrated or whatever, and just see
ooh,
what
overrated and underrated, yeah.
see if they first of all know what that means, and then
Yeah.
second of all see what kind of answer you get, because you never know what you're going to get from kids.
And then if you're lacking energy in any way, shape, or form, just bring Riley right on.
I mean,
I
ask
was
her
just
too. Yeah.
It'll soar.
one of my favorite things that Riley has ever done, which brings me to another personal plug for Wrestling with the Realm podcast. Um, if you guys do nothing else, if you're not interested in wrestling, please go to Wrestling with the Realm podcast on YouTube, and you will find on one of our episodes, it's not an episode, it's a very special collection. This is a visual product. It is Christmas Carnage at the Condo between myself, Blackjack Vegas,
Oh yeah.
and my 4-year-old nephew at the time, Primetime Press.
Oh yeah.
We had an
Good
epic
times.
wrestling battle, complete with promos between each other, and a big championship match 2 years ago at Christmas.
Mhm.
It was all documented. Please watch that. It is the greatest thing I've ever done. You will be highly entertained by
That's
that.
good.
And one of the best things Riley has ever said to me when we pulled up to the wilderness and we get out, and I think I had my championship belt at the time. Spoiler alert, you don't see a championship belt on me, do you?
Uh-huh.
He was a high flyer. I didn't know he could do that.
Well, he did have this.
I
He
wasn't
did. He did.
expecting
He did
that.
have that sock that he brought out. So
Yeah, the stink foot. The
the
stink foot's
stinky
no
sock
joke.
he brought out. So I mean, you were done
Yeah,
right then.
yeah.
Chairs
So
get broken? Anybody break any chairs?
no,
Good.
no, he was amazingly resilient.
He
Oh,
jumped off a chair, didn't he? He was on
yeah,
a
he
chair at
did.
one point. Yeah, I
Yeah, he
remember.
did. I don't like talking about that part.
It
But
was so
please
fun
go
though.
watch that, everybody. I promise you, it's worth the few minutes of your time to see this rivalry between Blackjack Vegas and Primetime Press.
Mhm.
But when we pulled up to the wilderness, and I think I had the championship belt on, and Riley looks up to me and she goes, "You look like Seth freaking Rollins." I'm like, okay. And I go,
Yep. And I'm sure it was really loud when she said it.
Yeah, it wasn't quiet. That's for
and
sure.
it was so perfect because I know she watches wrestling with Derek,
Yep.
so her coming out and saying Seth freaking Rollins was classic.
Yeah. See. Well, I'm looking at the notes I was taking, and I
Yep.
think there's a missed opportunity with RuPaul and some drag wrestling.
Yes.
I definitely think that there's an opportunity there for somebody to make some more money than they already have, for sure.
They had one episode of Drag Race where it was a wrestling oriented one.
I was gonna say, I bet they could do
Yeah.
something like that, because yeah, I could see that.
So not funnily enough, I don't think funnily is a word, but
Yeah, it is now.
interestingly enough, um, in Vegas, so we stuck to a lot of the WWE stuff. There was so much that you could do. Um, Again, I give all my thoughts on that, on what I thought of it, but there was like there was the WWE convention part, and then there was the WrestleCon, which was the bigger one where, all the old timers would be, and like everything was at that one. We never got to it. But when I was looking up everything that would be there in Vegas for it, it turned out that a lot of like small independents, a lot of the indie organizations use WrestleMania weekend. I don't know if it's just because it was in Vegas and that's a destination for people, but a lot of them were doing like their biggest shows of the year throughout that weekend. And one of them is like the world's largest LGBTQ wrestling federation. We're having like their big event, and I think that was on like Saturday at like 11 p.m. And I can't remember exactly where it was, but I thought that was really cool. That wrestling is one of those things where it can be very communal,
Yeah.
and that was kind of nice to see, especially in Vegas. Um, Me and Danny said right away when we got there that it was like being in an episode of Las Vegas. You know how it was always like over the top, exaggerated? Like if it was a sci-fi convention, everybody in the Montecito is part of that convention and is dressed up and it's wacky. That's what it felt like, but with wrestling. Like it literally felt like an episode of Las Vegas because it was just everywhere and everybody is, dressed up. People are wooing like Ric Flair walking through casinos. It literally felt like an episode of Vegas. Um, and I think the wrestling fans came off leaving a good impression in Vegas. Like there was no incidents. There wasn't anything crazy that happened. Everybody was pretty respectful. So it was a nice showing for the wrestling community.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think I was there one time during the pro bull riding or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that they
Yeah,
have. It was the same type of thing. Everywhere you looked,
Yeah.
everybody was about what's going on there. And I think that's one of the things about when you go to Vegas, like you said, whatever's going on there, everybody gets into it.
Yep.
I mean, you when you're there and there's an event going on, you know what that event is without even knowing what the event
Mm-hmm.
is. You know what I mean? You don't have to look it up and go, "Hey, what's going on?" That there's so many people. You can pretty much put it together by
Yeah.
looking at the crowd and going, "It's got to be a wrestling thing going on, or it's got to be NASCAR's in town, or it's got to be
Yep.
the Cowboy Championships, whatever it is." You
Yeah.
can usually tell. So I know what you mean. Yeah, it's
Yep.
people come out full force and they support whatever it is that they're there for, and
Mm-hmm.
that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. So we had it all figured out for our episode of Las Vegas. We are like, oh man, if they did do a wrestling one, like we had all the beats worked out. We're like somebody like Austin Theory, who is a wrestler. He's one of the younger hottie guys. Um, So like they would so use Austin Theory, like Delinda and him would be like dating or something. Mike would have to get involved in a match because somebody got hurt, and we'd find out that he used to do professional wrestling when he worked or when he went to MIT. Like we had this whole thing worked out. Ed would have been over the whole thing. He just would have been pissed off with all the wrestling fans. Although he would befriend some wrestling fan who was down on their luck and wind up helping them somehow, but make fun of him the whole time because he's
Well, yeah,
big.
why
Like we had the whole episode worked out. It sounds like a great episode, by the way.
not?
They should do that. They should bring it back just so we can do that episode.
I would agree. I
Yeah.
would watch it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Everybody knows we love that show.
So what do you guys got coming up? Anything that you can talk about, or
Yeah, we're gonna have
Maybe
our backlash review coming up. So we're gonna review the event that's going on tonight. We'll have that out probably sometime next week. And then after that, we actually had a request for one of our retro rewatches for Royal Rumble 1991. So we're going to have that out. So we got a Backlash review coming up, and then we're going to do a retro rewatch of Royal Rumble 1991 that somebody requested. And I'm so glad they did because it's going to be a fun one. A lot of these old ones, they're really fun podcasts to do when we review them because they're quite silly. And the worse they are, the more fun it is to talk about.
so when people bring that up and they say, "Hey, we want you to do this retro one," Do you already remember what that one was about, or are you going to have to watch it to refresh your memory? Or if someone says, "Hey, I want to watch 1993 or whatever," do you already go, "Oh, I know exactly what happened during that one"?
I'll have a pretty good idea if it's from the 80s or the 90s. I have a pretty good idea. And if it's from the 2010s to now, Will's going to have a good idea about it. And I said that's going to be one of the fun things is Will has seen some of these older ones, but not all of them like I have. So when we watch those older ones, it's really fun to see Will watch them and review them if he's not familiar because he knows today's product. And then I said
Yeah.
there's 15 or 20 years where I didn't watch, but Will did. So some of those are going to be the same thing for me. That it's going to be brand new to me, which will be exciting for him. Uh, but like Royal Rumble 91, yeah, I remember what happened in that one. Yeah. Hogan wins. Hogan must pose.
Ah,
I
that
do a
was
lot
the
of
Hogan era, huh?
impersonations. I do a
Oh,
great
dear.
Vince McMahon impersonation. So if
Do you
you ever,
guys dress up on the pod on the YouTube thing? Do you guys dress up like in your Hulk Hogan and he's Ric Flair or something, or you guys do stuff like that, or no?
well, the beginning of each podcast,
Do you guys have
always
entrance music when you come out?
we have an entrance song. We
All
have a
right,
ding ding. We
there
have
you
an
go.
entrance song.
All right.
It goes like this.
Oh,
Welcome, Realm family, to another episode of Wrestling with the Realm podcast. I'm Brian, one half of the power and glory of Wrestling Podcast. And next to me, he is the Hercules to my Paul Roma, my guy Will. Will, what are we talking about? And then Will
there you
will
go.
usually say what we're talking about. Yeah,
Oh,
we are the Power and Glory, which was a tag team that was briefly together in the
gotcha.
late 80s, early 90s. We originally were the Mega Powers of Wrestling Podcast, and he was the Hulk Hogan to my Macho Man. But then Hulk Hogan got booed really, really hard because he's a turd. So we were like, yeah, we're going to stop using that one. So then we switched it.
He was in Kenosha a couple weeks back.
Yeah, I know. He was probably turding it up there, too.
He was at Mars signing
Yeah.
his beer
His All
or
American
whatever.
beer.
Yeah, whatever
Yeah.
he had. So
Yeah, I know. Another
I heard
teacher at
about it. I
work.
didn't see him. I heard about it. So
Another teacher at work the day before that sends me a picture at like 10:30 at night. He had a jazz concert there that he was performing in. And he sends me a picture of Jimmy Hart sitting there watching his show. And he was like, "Hey, is that the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart?" I said, "Yeah. Where is he? What is he doing? Get him on the podcast." And he said he was gone already. And I said, "Oh, he was there because Hogan was going to Kenosha. They were making the rounds." So yeah, that's
yeah,
why he was around signing his All American beer, being a turd, making children cry.
making children cry.
Yeah,
That's not nice.
no, it's a
The
whole thing.
Hulkster making kids cry. I thought that was against everything he believed in.
Boy, you're way behind on this. His training,
Mama.
the prayers, and the vitamins, and his whole thing that he used to do. Yeah,
He had his own TV show for a while, didn't
yeah, he did. He's kind of turdy on there too.
he? Okay, well, I'm gonna write
Yeah,
that note down. Hulk
yeah.
Hogan
Hogan's
is a
kind of
turd. Okay.
for like a lot of reasons.
All right. Well,
So
we
we
don't have time
stopped.
to get into all those reasons.
No, Will and I dabble
You
in
dabble.
getting into those things. I ranted about The Rock pretty good in the WrestleMania 41 review. So The Rock has been turning it up lately.
Yeah,
So
he
there's
is the
that.
Rock though. He
Yeah,
could probably get away with it more than Hulk Hogan, huh?
he's he's walking on thin ice, but in a different way. The
Oh,
Rock needs to go away and make his crappy movies and
oh.
not get himself involved in what's going on because he's screwing up everybody's shit.
All right. We alienated Hulk Hogan and The Rock tonight, so I'm gonna make a note of that.
Yeah,
So they won't be
don't worry. He
listening.
already blackballed us. He probably listened to our show and then
Oh,
heard me talking crap about him, and even Will did. Will, Will is usually very mild mannered, so yeah, even Will wasn't very happy with him. So I'm sure we lost him then. If it makes you
well,
feel any better.
well. Yeah, I'm gonna sleep the same tonight, knowing that it's not gonna really make a difference for me. But so how have you checked out how many other wrestling podcasts there are? Are you guys like are you a small fish in a big pond, or are you a big fish in the pond all by yourself?
We are a small fish in a big pond, but we're like a goldfish.
Hmm,
We'll just get as big as whatever we're in. We'll just keep growing, and we're getting a little bigger. So
good.
every little bit helps. I think people have been enjoying what we've been doing. Um, so it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun
So
for us.
so if anybody wants to buy any swag like that fancy hat you got on or the shirts I always see you wearing, can
Mhm.
people reach out to us somehow or to you directly through the Wrestling with the Realm and get a hold of one of those hats?
If anybody is interested, reach out to the realm so we can see if that's a possibility. We don't have anything set up yet, but if we find out that people do, then we can get something rolling.
Yeah, I really like that hat. I think I need to. I
Yeah.
think we need to look at making some T.R.P.D. Stuff. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
winter hats would come in handy, especially in Ireland.
Yeah. I
Um,
picture like the black hat and we use like the purple in the green, the TRPD, just real kind of, not basic, but
no,
we
but
can
kind of
have it,
like what you got
just
there, right
yeah,
across
yeah.
there, and maybe
Yep.
something else on there.
Mhm.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I'm
like that
down.
idea a lot. All right. Well, do
But
you
yeah,
ladies
we're
have anything else for Mr. Brian here?
No, I'm good. I just wanted to add, Rob and I always used to have wrestling parties,
Oh,
but
okay, cool.
not
perfect.
what you think. It would be we would have all of our friends over to watch WrestleMania,
Oh,
probably in the late '90s, and
What else would it be?
yeah, right, exactly. And it was
I bet
probably
if I asked Rob, it was something
heavy on
else.
the party, probably.
Oh yeah, well,
You know,
get that. Yep.
yeah,
I
but it was
did.
a good time. We did it for years, and our friends came over, and
Oh, cool.
we've kind of been out of it since then. But we did watch it a ton back then, so it was fun.
I
Yeah.
do have a question for you. So, Becky Lynch,
hmm
overrated or underrated?
Ooh, I let the hat out of the bag on that one, and I called her overrated just on our WrestleMania review. And I was like, I'm sure people are going to come at me for that, but we might have to do an episode of overrated, underrated. And even though I'm spoiling it now, why do you think she's overrated? Because she is.
I don't follow wrestling as much as my family, meaning my daughter and my grandkids and my son in law. But when she came out
Uh
unexpectedly
huh.
um, at the most recent big event, they were just so shocked and they were just so excited that she was there. And, they really made this really big deal about her. And I don't follow it all that much. I've been following with my grandkids, so I just wasn't sure because apparently she really made an impact on your generation. So that's why I was asking.
Well, I will say this, and that's totally understandable. What's super fascinating and super fun is the women's division because they've come such a long way in a
Yes.
relatively short amount of time. Just being a woman in that business has completely done a 180 from what it used to be, which is good for the product. Back in the day, professional wrestling was basically like carny, and thankfully we have come a very long way that the performers are treated better, they're getting paid more according with how much the parent company is making, and they're treated more like actors and talent than what they were before, and that means everybody kind of has a fair shake. And in the women's division it's pretty astounding. So with Becky Lynch has been out for a little bit, and the women's division is progressing so quickly that in the time that she's been out, there are people that have come in, and there's people who are down in NXT in the developmental that are further than where she is and the things that they do. So it's such a exponential growth on the women's side that it's real easy to get passed up and forgotten about. And Becky Lynch, again, it sounds like I'm ragging on her. If anybody's a Becky Lynch fan, I'm not trying to bag on her that hard. I'm just saying that when you see Tiffany Stratton where she's at compared to Becky Lynch, it's hard for Becky Lynch to come out and not be a heel. So they have her working as a heel. In wrestling, we have baby faces and heels. The baby face is the good guy, and the heel is the bad guy. And that's how you tell your stories. And Becky Lynch right now is working as a heel, and I think that suits her more. But I don't see what all the hype is always about Becky Lynch. But that's just me. It's because I'm a Liv Morgan fan. Sure, that's what people would say.
It's your opinion. It's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, right?
No, I don't know.
It's not a right. It's probably not a right or wrong answer either way. So, just like a lot of the stuff that we talk about in both, I mean,
Sure.
like you said, the parallels between the wrestling and the paranormal stuff we talk about. There's probably really not a yes, no, right or wrong answer for anything, because it's it's not a scientific thing. It's you find stuff and you bring it out and you share it, and everybody's going to have their own opinion. So, I've always been a firm believer in you don't realize it unless you're there. If you're there and you were a part of it, it makes different. You absorb it differently. I think for me to come back and tell you guys about what we experienced in Ireland and what we found and what we think we have and all these sounds we got on recorder, you're gonna take that differently than we did when we were there, because we were there, so we know what the environment was, we know what we heard, we know what we didn't hear, and it's been that way forever, even with all the TV shows and all that stuff, So, but
I know Amy had to
oh,
drop, but
all right, well, I think you've answered the questions. I think you've enlightened all of us here on the realm side of the pod.
There's one other thing that I would say for our paranormal fans here.
What's that?
If you wanted to see kind of a little bit of a crossover between the wrestling and the paranormal, that I said they're very close, there's actually a couple of professional wrestlers on YouTube, and they do paranormal investigations. So if you guys go to YouTube and just type in Scarlett and Shotzi, they're two women's division wrestlers for WWE. Shotzi won't be at the end of her contract, but that's a whole thing. But they're known women wrestlers, like they're actual people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're people who are on weekly television for WWE.
Yeah.
They have a YouTube channel, Scarlett and Shotzi, where they actually go and they investigate. Like they did, was that Eastern State Penitentiary?
Oh yeah, Eastern
Like
State.
like they're doing like real ghost hunters types paranormal investigations, and a lot of times they'll have other wrestlers on there with them as guests, and they actually had one with Liv Morgan and her tag team partner Raquel Rodriguez,
Nice.
and that might have been the Eastern State one.
Oh,
and they had
nice.
some interesting stuff on there with they had like an ovulus, a word generator and stuff when they were going around. And on two occasions while they were there, Raquel Rodriguez, her real name is Victoria. Her ring name is Raquel Rodriguez. But as they're doing some Q&A stuff, they're getting on the ovulus, something about, a room, and then it would say Victoria, and it did her name. She was like, that's weird that it put up Victoria, because she uses an alias in the ring, so it's kind of weird that she's there. And then Liv Morgan, a little bit later, it did the same thing for her. I can't remember if it was an EVP that they got that said Gia, so it didn't say Gianna, but it said Gia,
right?
Which would be short for that, which is her real name. Right. So they had some weird stuff on. So yeah, Scarlett and Shotzi, guys, go check that out. They're pretty good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, they're pretty good.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we bring this episode to an end. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week for this Wrestling with the Realm backstage pass, so to speak. Get the ins and outs of what that part of our podcast family is. So, Brian, thank you. give our best to Will. Keep up the good work.
All right.
And we'll be back in a week with some new Weird Weekly news and some more episodes from Ireland. I don't remember exactly what our next episode is going to be that we're going to be recording. But this season 7, is pretty much dedicated to our trip overseas to Ireland and Scotland and our findings and the places we visited. So if you've been following
We're
along,
working on that too, man. We're getting some stuff debunked and figured
Oh.
out. I had a robot driving me crazy the other day, so
what about that?
luckily we were able to
What
get to
about
the
the
bottom
stuff
of
Rob
that.
caught? Did you go back and listen to that?
Yeah,
What'd you think?
it's weird.
It's a good one.
It
You see all of us. You see all of us
That's-
leave the room,
right.
and it sounds like it's right by the camera, clear as day.
Yeah,
I have no idea what that growling is.
you
I don't
know,
have
and
it anywhere
I
on my
have one
cell
on
phone.
my camera. It's not a growl, but it's up close on the mic, and it's like a like that on my camera, and it's at a very specific spot where that automatic hall light goes out, and then the IR kicks back on. And once it kicks back on, when the camera goes, it's black for a second, and then it comes back into focus. It was like as it was coming back into focus, you could hear that heavy breath, and it was close. I know it wasn't any of you guys because it was close to the camera. So that
Right.
it was weird. It wasn't a growl, but it was a weird thing again that was similar.
Yeah, the thing that he has, if it isn't a growl, it could be a purring of some sort. Because I have a cat sound that sounds like a cat purring or meowing or
I think I have one too.
it's. I wonder if it's the same one
Yeah.
I have because it was on a recorder and it's so freaking loud and so.
Was it the first night?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I think mine might have been on the first night too.
I just have no idea. I can't debunk it because I don't know what it is. It's not a voice. No one tags it.
Okay, mine, I have my note right here. So
Yeah.
mine it's chapter 2 of my camera, so that should have been night 1.
Well, they'll tell me where you got your stuff at. I'll watch it.
Okay,
Let's see
so
if I
mine
hear it.
it's camera 4, chapter 2, 23 minutes and 1 second. I have sounds like a child or a cat.
23 minutes and what?
1 second.
On the bottom ticker or the top?
Bottom ticker.
All right, I'm going to listen to it and see what I can find. See if
Yeah.
that's the same thing I got.
Yeah, it said child or a cat. So when you just said cat, it stuck out to me because I remember writing that down. It was weird because
Oh, yeah. That's
it was
definitely
like
weird.
it was really.
Mine sounds like a cat meowing. Like,
Hmm.
it's like,
Yeah, that's how mine kind of was, but I'm like I couldn't tell if it was like kind
I
of
have
high
no clue.
pitched,
So, yeah.
but it sounded like a meow. But there was no cats.
No.
No, none of you brought a goddamn cat with you there.
No, I did not. I couldn't bring them.
Oh, we have many, but none of them
No,
came
but they were all still accounted for back here. Yeah.
up.
Yeah, so we got some weird stuff,
Yeah.
like Brian just said. So stay tuned for that because I'm really looking forward to seeing what we got. I'm almost done. I'm almost through all of my recorder. I got like 3 hours left, I think, and I'm done. And then I just got cameras and body cams to watch. And I'm going to start with going back and watching my body cam footage of the things I think I found
Mm-hmm.
to see if any of that translates to that. And same thing with the cameras.
Yeah.
Besides watching the camera that I'm watching. So I think we've got some really cool stuff from over there. And I think a couple of things that we just discussed and talked about that we think we have makes me more optimistic about the other things that I'm not sure about
Mhm.
because
Yep.
the couple things that we have caught just are head scratchers, and being that we can verify by camera and other devices that there's nobody around or there's no possible way it can be one of us. Like the piano key, I don't get.
Yeah.
That I have no idea. I did hear back from the host over there. She said that they've never had anybody say anything about a piano playing. A harp. She said that Orwin, the Sabine's boyfriend or whatever, would always play a harp or something to her. So they've had people say that they've heard like a harp playing, but the one that we have is clearly a piano key, and it's just one key. Ping. That's it. It's all it is. And I don't have it on. I've listened to like 36 hours of recordings on my record. I don't have that anywhere. Anywhere. Yet it's on a camera that's recording in our base camp, and you see all of us in both rooms. None of us react. None of it. I don't know what it could be. I don't know what it is. We've asked everybody that's there. Nobody has said, "Yep, that was me." Yeah, that's a sound my phone makes. Yeah, it's. Everybody said, "Nope, not us." So, and by watching the video, I don't see anybody. Rob's on his phone, but he's not doing it. He's looking at it. All of us are in the other room doing stuff, but none of us go like we heard it and we've become really, really good at tagging when we make a noise. I think we've come leaps and bounds in that. And no one said, "Oh, that was me." So I have no idea. Same thing with the music box I caught. I have no clue what that is either. And I got the REM pod going off. I heard it go off for a second, and that was up in the Baron's room. Nobody's up there.
Have you gotten to that orb towards the end of the night yet in Sabine's room?
Not yet. Not yet, but we did see something similar on a different camera in either the Baron's or
library
or the O'Reilly room on one of the walls. We did see that funky light anomaly or whatever.
Yeah.
That you were trying to describe to me up in the other room.
Yep.
So I think I know what you're talking about, but I did not see that yet. I do have an anomaly in Sabina's room in the bathroom. That's really no idea. Comes out of nowhere, disappears, and it's like a white wisp, and it's not like it's a bug because it doesn't come across. It just appears and disappears just as fast. I'm like, what the hell was that? And it's like in the middle, like towards the ceiling. It's not like it's down low on the floor. It's in the middle of nowhere.
And that's why after you get to the orb that I saw, I said there's that weird light on the back of the wall in her room, and that's what it does. It's like somebody has a flashlight and you just see it go across the wall.
It's weird.
Because if you see it on the camera footage in there, because the only thing I could think of that it is a reflection on the monitor that we had set up for the YouTube feed. So we were seeing a reflection on the YouTube side. So if you see it on the camera in the room, then that means it was in the room, and there should not be a flashlight going along the top of there.
No,
like that.
No.
That. I'm hoping that it's just a reflection, so we can debunk that and just have it done. Otherwise, I don't know what the hell that is.
Yeah, I think there's something going on there. Everybody will have to stay tuned for our findings. I hope we'll be able to put together some type of evidence review video like we've done in the past. Because I think we're going to have quite a bit of things that are unexplainable, just to say the least. But anyway, thanks for coming out, guys. Catch us next time on The Realm, and don't forget to go over and check out Wrestling with the Realm. I'm Rich for Brian and Jenny. See you guys later. Peace out, big balls.